everybody, this is Payanna and welcome to my channel, and today's book is The Moon Reich by Johanna Sinisalo, another Finnish author, because I have a fetish, apparently. This novel hasn't yet been translated into English, but other books by Johanna Sinisalo have been, like this one, Not Before Sundown, so I have hope. I don't know what the English title's gonna be. The Moon Reich is the French title. The Finnish title is Iron Sky Rnaten Tarina, so I don't know what that means. So I'm gonna go with the Moon Reich for this video. This book is a prequel to the Finnish sci-fi movie Iron Sky, which came out in 2012, I think. I haven't seen it, so I can't really comment on that. So this book tells the story of the Nazis that fled the Earth after having lost World War II. They fled in 1945 and went to live on the moon, where they founded an underground hidden colony based on Nazi ideology and the worship of their divine leader Hitler, whose body is kept in a glass coffin, kind of like Kim Jong-il's or Stalin's body. There they live in this sort of cult-like society, waiting for the day they'll be able to go back and conquer the earth and rule over everyone. The story is entirely told from the point of view of a woman named Renate Richter, who is writing a diary for her daughter to kind of narrate her entire life to her, and she starts writing this diary in the year 2047, and she starts by recounting her childhood in this moon-dwelling Nazi cultish society. And when she was 6 years old in 2003, she read Heidi by Johanna Spiri and got completely obsessed with all the language used in it, like mountains and grass and rivers and leaves and wind, because having lived all her life on the moon, she had no idea what any of these things were, and that sparked her passion for studying the earth. As a child, she's completely devoted to the ideology she's been brought up in. She completely takes everything for granted, doesn't think there's anything wrong with keeping subhumans as slaves to work on the crops deep underground, or that there might be something off with the Valhalla Gardens, which is where they send elderly people and sick people, and once they go there, they can never be visited by their families and are never seen again. In 2018, everything changes. At this point, Renate is a teacher, and a man named Klaus Adler has expressed a very strong desire to marry her. She writes him a letter that will be presented to a board to approve their union, and in this letter she explains all the reasons why she doesn't want to marry him and doesn't think that she's the ideal wife for him. Klaus fakes this letter to present to the board, painting her as like his ideal partner, and their union gets approved despite the fact Renate doesn't want to have anything to do with this man. Renate starts feeling betrayed and angry that no one sought her approval for this union, and also the fact that her fiancé just doesn't care about her opinion at all. When she expresses her disapproval, he just shrugs it off and says, "Look, I'm doing this for the good of the Reich. I know what I'm doing, just shut up and be a good wife." And this is the point where she starts having mixed feelings about the ideology, because she's been brought up as a woman, and women and men have very clear responsibilities and positions in this society, and she starts getting very, not angry, but just tweaked about that she doesn't see why she's less intelligent or less good as the men are. And so she starts sort of having these inner dialogues saying that maybe this isn't okay, this is the ideology that I follow and I believe in it, but maybe this is a bit wrong. And then something completely extraordinary happens. A spaceship lands on the moon, a US spaceship, which hasn't happened since the 1970s. And they take one of their crew captive, a black man, and they find this incredible device on him. He has a cell phone, and they are just completely bewildered by this object because it's got this extraordinary computing power, and all of their computers are these huge, great objects that fill up entire rooms, like, you know, computers back in the 1960s. And so they realize that how advanced the Earth is, like how much they've caught up over time, and see great potential in this device, that this has the computing power for them. If they can harness this power, they could take over the Earth. They are rather bewildered as to why the US would send a subhuman man. This man, whose name is James Washington, is black, therefore subhuman according to them. Why he would be sent on such an important mission to go to the moon. And later they find out that he is in fact a model, and him being sent as a sort of space tourist to the moon is all part of the US president's sort of PR stunt to boost her election campaign. And they're equally as astounded to find out that the President of the United States is indeed a woman, because it's unthinkable for them that a woman could be promoted to such a high-ranking position, which leads them to just realise how crazy and the world, like the Earth, has become in their absence. Everything's gone wrong, and now a woman is President of the United States. Wow. Renata takes a great interest in James Washington because he's come from the Earth and she's completely obsessed with the Earth. So she's not allowed to talk to him, but she kind of sneaks into where he's being, the cell he's being kept, in order to have conversations with him. She discovers that her father and her fiance Klaus are performing an experiment on him to try and turn him into an Aryan. So they bleach his skin and his hair and blast Nazi ideology at him like 24/7. The idea is to see if they can sort of transform non-Nazi people into like perfect Nazis, completely infused with the ideology. At this point, they start organising a journey down to Earth in order to try and get hold of these cell phones, this computing technology that will help them to take over the Earth. Klaus Adler, Renata's fiance, is chosen to lead this mission. She asks to be a part of it because she's been studying Earth her whole life and she's like the leading expert on Earth, but her request is turned down because she's a woman. And women aren't supposed to take part in such important things, because I mean, I think Klaus actually says, you know, don't worry your pretty little head about it, or something like that, to just waft her off, like, yeah, women, stupid, no. Once the ship lands on Earth, Renata reveals herself to the rest of the crew, having smuggled herself onto the ship before it took off. And the whole part when they're on Earth is pretty funny, because they have grown up in this world that is so controlled, like everything, they rule over everything, and now they're subjected to the wild world that is the Earth. And you have, like, Renata, there was this passage which I really liked, where she's describing the plants. And the plants on the moon, they grow hemp, which they use for pretty much everything, and cabbages. And she describes them as being completely subdued and under their rule. But the plants on the Earth, when they have to walk through this forest at one point, and how the plants get angry because they're under attack and they defend themselves by scratching and stinging. And what a contrast that is with their sort of lovely, sedate little world. There's also a scene where Klaus gets really angry because he finds a cockroach in his hotel room, and how just enraged he is by this cockroach that is basically just snubbing him, and what a disrespectful creature that is. The fact that water is so freely available also comes to as a huge shock to them. They can't take a shower for more than 1 minute on the moon because water is rationed to such an extreme degree, and here, like, they just flush it down the toilet. Wow! On Earth, Renate and Klaus meet up with a woman called Vivian, who is the press correspondent to the president, the one who's in charge of her campaigns, and she is kind of, I guess, enchanted by their ideology, kind of glossing over the fact that they're Nazis from the moon, which they're always very honest about, and employs them in order to create a new, like, campaign approach for the President of the United States. The result of all of this is a nuclear war between the Earth and the moon that doesn't end well for the Earth. So overall, I did enjoy reading this novel, but I thought the whole, like, presidential campaign thing, the kind of dynamic between Klaus and Renate and Vivian was really odd. Like, that was the only part that I had an issue with, because it worked really well in the sense that, like, getting them involved with Earth life and seeing how the world works. I mean, they're in New York, but yeah, seeing how they relate to all of it and learning this new way of life. But it was kind of pushing it a bit, like getting these two random people and that Vivian thinks have come from some kind of backwards state somewhere, getting them to write like discourse speeches for the president. That was, for me, that was kind of pushing it a bit. It felt like a cheap excuse to kind of maneuver them into a high position. I also thought the ending, like at the end there's a war between the Earth and the moon, and which Renate hints at all the way through her writing this diary. She kind of hints at the refugees that have come from the Earth to live on the moon. She hints at the war and how the Earth is no longer inhabitable. So the war part is like what we're building up to, and it just all happens so fast, and it just goes by vroom, and oh, there are the survivors, and there's like a brief paragraph to kind of explain how the refugees from Earth came to live on the moon and the kind of Nazi colony, and how they all fitted in, and that they had to just basically disregard their ideology. And also the part where Renate realizes that everything she's been taught is a lie is also happens very quickly. Like she obviously she kind of goes through this point where she's like, no, it can't be a lie. They can't have known, or like learning about Nazi history on Earth. And yeah, I don't know. I just felt it was good. Like the idea is good. The whole basis of it was well thought out, but it just happened so quickly. I just felt it could have been explored in greater depth. So, I think in conclusion, I did enjoy reading this novel. I did really like it. It felt like reading a YA, it's like sci-fi novel. It didn't really feel like a novel that's really geared towards adults, but like what I was saying, the fact that everything kind of happens so quickly. So yeah, I think this works really well as a YA sci-fi novel, but not necessarily like a serious sci-fi futuristic / dystopian novel for adults. And I do hope that it gets translated soon, because it is pretty entertaining and it's definitely worth a read. So that was the Reich, or Iron Sky Renaten, what's it called in Finnish? Renaten Tarina. Iron Sky Renaten Tarina in Finnish by Johanna Sinisalo. So that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed this. Do leave a comment, like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you all soon. Bye bye.